outside the barracks by the corner light. I'll always stand and wait for you at night. We will create a world for two. I'll wait for you the whole night through. For you, Lily Marlene. For you, Lily Marlene. Bugler tonight, don't play the call to arms. I want another evening with her charms. Then we will say goodbye and part. I'll always keep you in my heart. With me, Lily Marlene. With me, Lily Marlene. Give me a rose to show how much you care. Tie to the stem a lock of golden hair. Surely tomorrow you'll feel blue, but then will come a love that's new. For you, Lily Marlene.
Top of the evening, everyone. Really overwhelmed. We have so many writers and readers amongst us, but we've lucked out. We've got Brinda Krishna here, we've got Manish Gaikwad here, I don't know, we've got Shivaji Dasgupta here, we've got Harish here. How many others? Everybody's written a book, or we have a book inside of us, right? So when I met, I call her Zeena Ma, because my mother was just taking the last flight out, and I met Zeena Ma. She had just published her first memoir on being a student at Loreto Convent, Darjeeling. So, with much excitement, Oxford 2019, just before COVID. And it was standing room only. I still remember Anjan Datto playing those lovely songs. And, the book flew. And her good friend, Krishna's husband, Ramesh, is here. So welcome, Ramesh. Thank you for coming. And I know Krishna is with us. Maybe not in the flesh, but she is with us. My biggest thank you tonight is to the principal of Loreto College, and someone who has opened the doors and windows to many of us who had seen them kind of shut in the last decade. So big hand for Sister Dr. Nirmala for being here. Thank you, thank you. Rita Bhimani is here. On the Board of Governors was Mrs. Kaveri Dutt. Very happy she's here. So going back to the COVID years, I can see that Zeena Ma used her time and wrote voraciously to finish a book of this caliber with so many little peekaboos into what was happening in those very incredible years. And I think we have someone here who is of equal value and worth to us tonight, and that is Zeena Ma's brother, Mr. Riaz, who was the Foreign Secretary, no less, of Bangladesh at the time, who served in India, even as a High Commissioner. Those were which years, Riaz, Mama? 70-71, historic years. So without further ado, with trivia, I would like to congratulate Zeena Amma's daughter, Farzana, quite a tour de force and a woman of substance in many ways to be emulated. And I wish I could say you're also from Loreto, but I'm sure some of that spirit is rubbed onto you. Farzana, how long did it take you to edit this huge tome?
A month and a half. That's what. But I mean, it was done in 2 or 3 stages.
You have an alternative profession waiting for you. But I think what is interesting, most interesting about this book is that those 4 years of COVID drove Zeena Ma to find ways in which she could tell the story, intersection of personal history, of national history, of family history, and all of that seamlessly done while capturing the spirit of multiculturalism, which 50s, 60s, and 70s we all grew up with. To me, this I will recommend to those institutions, especially in Canada and in the US, might I say, who are studying the diaspora, who are studying the Anglo-Indian culture, because the worth in this is just phenomenal. I know the great GI specialist sitting here, Dr. Kalyan Bose, shares that wonderful love of cuisine and culture with his wife, who's there too, and thank you for coming. So there are many aspects in this book which appeal to many of us. And let's see if we can unearth some of that in our conversation. Harish, before we start on the book per se, would you care to just tell us a little bit about the Rising Asia Foundation, under which we are doing this for Zeena?
So very warm welcome, friends. I think a lot of you are familiar with what Rising Asia Foundation does. I'm certainly familiar with most of you, and I'm delighted to have all of you present here in large numbers. The Rising Asia Foundation is about now, we began it during the COVID years, and our mandate is to look eastwards at the Eastern world. So that's Southeast Asia, China, Japan, the Koreas. So because as a journal, that's our niche area, because the foundation publishes a journal which is into its 6th year of publication. And we have an editorial board with scholars from various countries, the US, Canada, Singapore, Malaysia, and all are currently working professors at different levels of their careers. And they bring a lot of value to what we do. Our next issue, for example, is a special on the ancient literatures of South Vietnam. But actually, it's the whole of Vietnam. And the earliest stories are going back to the ancient period in the BCE period. And the youngest of the stories is a 14th century story. So there's magic there. There is politics, statecraft, how kings ran countries well and how they ran them to the ground. The foundation also has something called the Distinguished Annual Lecture, where we have diplomats such as Tommy Koh of Singapore, Dino Pati Jalal of Indonesia, and other scholars who've come. Then we have the Rising Asia Literary Circle, which is created and anchored by Julie, which meets the most often. It's probably the most active spoke in the wheel. And so we have a few other programs that are ongoing, and I'm delighted that you're all here. A warm welcome once again, and I think I run out of ideas of what I should be saying, but enjoy the evening.
Sister Nirmala, may I impose on you to say a few words? Even a little prayer would be nice.
Good evening, Julie, and good evening, everyone. I'm very happy to be here this evening. Julie asked me to say a short prayer. So let's close our eyes gently and take a moment of silence. I invite all of us to thank the universe for our existence. Let us keep a smile on our face. Become aware that we are alive, fully human and fully alive. We thank God, the Almighty and the universe, for our family members, for our culture, the root that we have, our children, brothers and sisters, our ancestors. At this moment, let us experience great peace and joy and gratitude, and send the same peace vibration to the people who are suffering due to war, the refugees, the immigrants, especially the illegal immigrants. Let us send peace to our leaders of our nations, that they may be inspired and may be able to do something for the people who are suffering. At this moment, we thank and praise God for this evening. I pray that each of us may be inspired by this conversation that we are going to hear, and we may continue to spread love, compassion. As we are forgiven, we experience compassion, the same we may be able to share with our family members, the place we work. Lord, bless Julie as she leads this conversation. Be with each one of us, that we may be the agent of peace. We make this prayer in the name of God we believe. Amen. So thank you once again. Let us continue to smile this evening and become aware of ourselves as we hear this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, sister. Let's try. Can you hear, Zeena ma?
Hello, friends.
Better.
So nice. Hello, Calcuttans. So nice to be in your company again. I'm so glad that I'm able to share the launching of my book right here in Calcutta, because I am a Calcutta girl myself and a Loreto girl. So we have a lot of things in common. And it's nice to talk about a time where life was so uncomplicated, when we had so many hopes and desires. And I just hope, I'll end there, because Julie has a lot of questions to ask, that you enjoy reading the book as much as I enjoyed writing it. So thank you, Julie, for preparing this for us, for doing this for me. As I said, you're my special sweetheart, and thank you so much.
Thank you. Zeena, what amazes me is that in 4 years, you put together this, which is very different from, your memoir of those few years at Loreto College in Loreto Convent in Darjeeling. It's a very different book, and it's a book which has meticulous research. My first question to you is, how did you conceptualize a book which is redolent with history that you lived in? How did you think of writing such a book?
Well, that's an easy question to answer. It follows upon my first book, which is Church Bells and Darjeeling Tea, about my years in Darjeeling, in Loreto Convent, in a convent, Catholic convent. I came from a very conservative Muslim background, and at the age of 7, when my mother and father were leaving for the United States to study, they put me and my brother Riaz in boarding schools in Darjeeling. So, where we spent 9 months of the year, from March to November, in a very strict, disciplined routine, where we were practically every minute we were practically taught what to think. So, excuse me, sister, but Loreto is very careful about routines and what allotted time. So, so the book was routine, and it is from 46 to 56. This book is from 46 November to 51. Those were the years my parents were away, and my grandmother looked after us in Calcutta. This book was a total contrast to the disciplinarian routines of Loreto Convent. Because I remember the first thing I would do as soon as the train would arrive, I remember November 46. My mother put me in school in July 46. November 40, when it arrived at Sealdah station, my grandmother, whom I called Nanna, received us in a taxi. Me, Riaz had come before, he was at St. Paul's. And the first thing I did was to take off my shoes and socks. And and Nanna didn't say anything. And that's how the book came into being. And it turned out to be the happiest years of my life. So it didn't have to be conceptualized. It was what I really enjoyed every year for 5 years, from November 46 to 51, when my parents came back, when I lived with my wonderful grandmother, my brother, and life was full of freedom of thought, freedom of action, where you planned your own enjoyment. So the conceptualization just occurred. I was that lucky.
Well said. And you've put the interviewer in a little spot, because now I have to think of a new way to ask the next question. So my next question to you would be, when you sat down and you said, okay, I'm going to write this story, how did you think you were going to... Memoirs are always tough, because you know there's so much you can take and so much you have to throw away. How did you make that selection, or did it come organically, Zeena?
Well, I would say it came organically.
Okay.
And I made the, remember, I was in Australia during the COVID years, the early COVID years, and I was thinking about my life. My husband had just died in 2017, and I was in Australia in 2019. I have loads of time on my hand, reflecting on my life. And then I thought, what were the years that I enjoyed most? So nothing to conceptualize, it just followed. That I would choose vignettes and memories and just jot them down while I was there. And later on, put them in a structured form to form a book. And I really realized that I was dealing with so many things that I had never dealt with before. Because I come from a particular culture, but in Calcutta, I got introduced to the Anglo-Indian culture. I got introduced to the patrician Hindu-Bengali culture because my grandfather and all were very friendly. Not very friendly, but they're acquaintances of Thakurbari. And then there was the Ingo-Bongo set. And Loreto was full of Ingo-Bongo, Brahmo Samaj, the Bengal Renaissance at my time. So we really had I had a wonderful time simply because my grandmother never ever told us what to do. We planned our day. And Riaz and myself, we would sit down and, except for certain things, just decide on what we wanted to do. And she gave us total freedom. He was a little boy of 6, I was a little girl of 7. And we were allowed to go to the matinee cinemas by ourselves. Riaz, of course, would never walk with me. Yeah, when we were in the street, but when we were on the tram, then we would be there. I would always be holding a book. So that was a lovely memory, and it started off like that.
When you chose to write the book, you were what? Farzana, she would have been 82?
Yes.
Yes, about 82 years old. And it's phenomenal to me that, even in my own little space when I'm looking at reviewing a book, and I'm thinking of all the historical contexts, whether it's 10-year context, whether the book is written in 20 years, what really shook me up about your book is there is so much attentiveness, meticulous research. How did you accomplish that?
For one thing, writing in that meticulous, as you said, following a routine was a part of my school training as well as my university training. So whenever we wrote anything, we would jot down our thoughts, but then we were asked to choose what were the incidences that affected us, what mattered. And I realized that those 5 years were the happiest years in my life. And I had to put them down and the form and the structure followed from that.
So Farzana, here's a question for you, because I think Zeena Ma spent the 4 years of COVID in Australia with you, right?
Actually, 2 years.
2 years. Okay, so you saw her beginning to write the book. Tell us a little about that. Was she a very disciplined writer, 2 hours in the morning, an hour in the afternoon, or was it different?
Yes, she very, very disciplined. She'd get up in the morning, have her breakfast, and she'd sit down. And sometimes she would work for 5-6 hours at a stretch. And she would, we would discuss stories and events that she would want to write about. We'd talk about it, and then she'd write it, and then she'd validate some of the facts on the dates, maybe through Google, and then write it again. And I had the, let's say, enviable task, or the not so enviable task to type it. And it was a nightmare, because she'd write, and then she'd put a little arrow in the little piece of paper that would be clipped to the back, because she was not familiar with using Microsoft Word or the editing. And I tried to get my daughter to do it. She gave up. I tried to get my mother to talk it through so that I could use software to, put the words in type. But so that was, so she'd write, and I would type. So that's how we did it.
Well, you're patient and a very devoted daughter, I must say, because this is Gabriel Garcia Marquez's style of writing. There are more patches and additions and texts, and your mind sort of is befuddled. What goes where, next where, and then there's an arrow. But moving on to the context that you were in, Zeena Ma, for instance, when you had Nana, your grandma, your true grandma, and Maggie, do you think it was such an eclectic and open kind of family that they encouraged your mixing with Anglo-Indians, Muslims, other Christians, as you said, the Brahmo Shamajis, the Bengali Hindus? This kind of openness, was it a rarity in your time, or was it pretty much the order of the day?
It was not a rarity. It was pretty much the order of the day. Though I have to admit, with the Anglo-Indian Society, they rented the downstairs, which is Lower Park Lane, which is Lower Park Lane in my book. My grandmother was the Upper Park Lane. I introduced myself to them. My grandmother was very formal with them. But because my grandfather, Abu Muzaffar Ahmed, was also a civil servant, he was a judge with the civil service, he got to know the rest of colonial civil service society. And my mother went to university, father went to universities, where they mixed freely with everyone. No, that is the thing I loved, that we were not aware of people's particular identity. You know, we mixed with people because we enjoyed. But I realize now that we did actually mix in a particular strata at times. But in this book, as a little girl, I cross over that strata. I make friends with people of different, but at the time when I was making friends, I didn't think I would talk to Master Moshe in the same way that I would be talking to, say, Hun Kaka, or, you know, the one would be lighting the lamp, the other would be in charge of teaching us Bengali, you know. So in that way, it was a wonderful, wonderful society. Free, open to ideas, looking forward to a new brave world.
So what grips the reader, I think the few of the readers that have come back to me on your book, is that in the chapter Nawabs and Kebabs, that particular chapter is unputdownable. Do I have my student Ankita here? Hi. Ankita, did you manage to read the book? Fantastic. So we'll expect some questions from you. And I thought that it's a nice recognition of the fact that you have intersected culinary history with the history of your own personal history, then your history of your family. So, and the nation and what was happening around you. Did you ever think that the colonial history and all these other histories you were talking about were different, or did you see them all come together?
I saw both things. I saw them coming together, and I did see they were different. But you must remember that I was a 7-year-old, always wanting to hear a story. A lot of the things that were told to me as stories. For instance, about colonial Calcutta was told to me in Flores by Maggie, the lady downstairs who I regarded as my second grandmother. And she had been training as a nurse. She was an Anglo-Indian and very well read. Then we had relations who lived in where
Garden Reach and
Garden Reach,
Mathieu Bruce.
Mathieu Bruce. Mathieu Bruce actually means a fortress. Mathieu is mati, fortress made of mud. And we went visiting people there. I don't know whether Riaz remembers, but I went everywhere with my grandmother. She was very social, and she mixed with people of all kinds. And she treated everyone with the same courtesy and attention, which I found fascinating. I myself find people from different walks of life fascinating, from different cultures fascinating. And I always, whenever I would go anywhere, if I went to Madhya Bruce, I would look at the house, the way it was. Yeah. But I lived in a house, my grandmother's house, upstairs, had not a single bit of furniture in it because she was so fond of the races. A lot of the money was spent, though it was replenished, though she had another mansion. But we all took it in our stride, So, and we were taught by my grandmother that you accept everybody on an equal level. People are people first. And but Madhya Bruce, I found it absolutely amazing because that is where the biryani came from. Because Wajid Ali Shah, when he was exiled. And when talking about culinary history, I myself, when I read a book, I'm extremely interested in what people eat and where they eat and what they eat. I don't know why. And I get very hungry sometimes when I know a friend wrote a book on Afghanistan. And the most interesting part of the book, I thought, was the one that she wrote about what they eat in different people's houses. That also betrays your culture.
Yes.
Now, Calcutta Kebab represents a particular culture, which is upper middle class Bengali culture. And the Christmas cake was Maggie's speciality, made with jaggery and not with sugar. So for me, there were two different worlds that met. And later on, Master Moshe came into our lives, though Riaz doesn't remember him very much, but I do. I'll read an excerpt about him. He was a friend and acquaintance of my grandfather at Oxford, about 15, 16 years younger. And through him, we got to know about the patrician Hindu society. So in that way, we were very lucky that my grandparents moved on one level, my mother moved on one level, and it was, we were very comfortable in each other's company. Nobody was aware of any differences.
What fascinates many readers, I think, outside the paradigmatic geography of the book, is that your grandmother, now, correct me if I'm wrong, but she went to Yale. She was one of the first Bangladeshi women, right?
My mother.
Your mother, imagine. And she was a very open-minded woman who wouldn't stop you from being a feminist?
Of course not. My mother was a feminist herself. And but my mother doesn't really feature in this book because she was away in the States. But when she came back, she had a huge influence on me. In our entire family. I would say it would also start from my grandmother, Nanna, who, Meme has taken recordings of her, my mother's memories of her mother, that's my grandmother. And she always encouraged her daughter to study. My mother was a BA honors when she got married to my father. Unusually, she married at the age of 25, whereas I married at the age of 19. But it shows that my grandmother was, my mother wanted to study. And education was of great importance to us. Books were our lifeline. And Riaz especially, I think, finished a book a day. I used to always say that, avid reader. We read voraciously, and wherever we went, nobody ever asked, do you have money or do you have food? Do you have a book with you? Because, in the intervening hours, when we're queuing up to get the third-class seats in the Metro cinema or the elite cinema, we can read a book. So, so there you are.
You had some funny stories years ago, talking these funny stories about your Nana who loved to gamble, right? Like you were saying.
Yeah, Nana. Yeah.
Nana. So, can you remember any anecdotes about, I think once, khabar chilo na, there was no khabar at home, but she was a darling. I mean, everybody loved her.
Well, my grandmother was very fond of races. I don't remember the part that there was Khawa Chinana, but nothing could take away from the Saturday date. And
Saturday.
at the Turf Club. And we would go and we would learn how to play. And she had her own box, because after all, my grandfather was a judge. And, you know, we learned to put, bets on place and all that. And one day I remember wandering up the Turf Club and meeting a very uncleish, nice gentleman. And he said, "What are you doing up here? These are the offices of the Turf Club." And I said, "Oh, I just came to see. Can you give me any hints? My grandmother is interested." He said, "Come in and have lunch with us." He was the Maharaja of Bardhaman. His daughters were in school with us. That I later discovered. I was then 7 or 8. And I had lunch with him. And I said, "What do you actually do?" He said, "Well, I'm the steward here." To me, steward had different connotations because, you know, when you read English books, a steward is somebody who manages, you know.
Serve you.
So that way. And he was very nice, and he gave me the tips. I ran down, gave it to Nanna, and she said, "No, I made my own study and I'll place my own bets."
There you
But
go.
even though I might give the impression that Nanna spent a lot of her money on the races, she always had money for the good things in life for us. And there was never any disappointment in that.
So when you were in Loreto, Darjeeling, little birds have come and told some of us that you were, you were a hot babe there. Some of the guys had very good things to say about you. How did you figure out being modern, yet not breaking the rules, yet being a girl of the 50s or the 60s, convent educated?
Well, in Loreto, to tell you the truth, actually I was a wallflower. The first 2 years, the dances that were held, the socials with the St. Joseph's boys, no one asked me to dance. When I was 13, when I was 14, things changed when I was 16. When a very good-looking boy stepped up and asked me to waltz, and his name was Shamsher Rana.
Tell us again.
His name was Shamsher Rana.
Okay.
He has passed away, but I'll never forget thinking, is this true? Am I dancing with the handsomest boy? No, my parents, yes, my mother was very conservative in certain senses, because when I got married at 19 and a half, she said, "Well, your husband is a diplomat, but there are certain things that you can always maintain. I don't like the idea of you dancing with anyone, because why should another man put his hand on you and this sort of thing?" And that came from my mother. My grandmother's totally
Different.
absolutely. She had very open-minded about things. And all my uncles also, they married from different countries. So we came from a background that was very international.
Since Riazji is also sitting here, maybe it's a question that both of you can attempt to look at. But there's always a little curiosity in the run-of-the-mill general reader. All of us would like to know. On the political front, when you came to serve, when your husband Farooqji was serving here as the High Commissioner, or when Riazji, you were here as the Foreign Secretary and you were dealing as High Commissioner as well in India, did you feel that you intrinsically knew India as well? And despite maybe political differences of opinion, you still had friends who were, close friends? And you still have them. You have Brinda, who's here today.
Well, I certainly felt that my friends remained my best friends. My best friend was Krishna Bose, later to be Krishna Jauhar. And they always remained friends. And I didn't perceive any difference in the way we moved with each other or the way we behaved with each other. But maybe Riaz, you could say something. You were foreign secretary. You dealt with people at a political level.
Okay, I'll come back to that.
I was just, as they say, I remember I was an adjunct to the diplomat, because after we got married, one of the first things I learned was that a confidential report was written on the wife. And I was amazed, because I thought it was my husband who was working and not me. So there you see, people thought in a joint way. They judged the way you behaved, the way you thought, the way you be. But it also helped you to coordinate things with your husband, if you were of the same. So to get back to your question, no, I certainly found, I was speaking to, I think, Dr. Bose, when I was telling him the second best years of my life was when Farooq was High Commissioner in Delhi, when Rajiv Gandhi was Prime. And these were the second 5 years that we spent. It was one of the happiest. So, but the earliest years of my life in Calcutta, and the last years before Farooq died, in the 90s. Those two, and I will certainly be writing about it in another book called The Courts of Kings. But that's a different thing altogether.
So the obvious question that leads me to, the next phase in our chat is to ask you. It's almost, it's almost a done deal that the first few chapters of this book show how you are immersed in the multicultural without thinking, this is a label which is multicultural later on. It was endemic, it was part of you. But the question is, would you say, when you went to other countries, these years that you spent at 7 Park Lane, and this, fusion of people and where they came from, their stories, do you think that helped you to go about the world with a certain confidence that all Loreto girls, I think, go with?
Yes, it certainly did, because we were brought up to mix with different cultures. I remember my husband's first posting was Rome. I had to learn Italian. They're easy people to get on with. Second posting was China. And there we had to negotiate learning the language. And it was interesting because at that time we were part of Pakistan. He was a Pakistani diplomat. Then later on, when the country, Pakistan divided and we became two countries, Bangladesh came into being. I think we became more aware of our particular identity as Bangladeshis, because under the Pakistani rule, first of all, Bengali was, they wanted Urdu to be the national language. There was a language movement and things like that. So it is very important for us to maintain our Bangladeshi identity. And I don't know whether that's a good thing or not. But I personally think that you maintain your own identity, but you should have an attitude towards people that allows you to understand them, their cultures, their point of view. Otherwise, you don't get to make friends.
Yeah. What were the greatest challenges, do you think? When you sat, and maybe there were moments when you said, aha, then what happened? This is something they said? How did I react to that? How did you retrieve so many details, Zeena? I think that fascinates not just the reader, but the critic. We have talking heads in academia. So how would you explain that? Memory studies today would sit up and say, 82 writing such a book? It's daunting.
Well, It came naturally to me because I loved, when you love a certain period, when you invested with your emotions and you remember what happy times they were. As Hardy once said, life is what is it? It's like full of sorrows, punctuated with moments of happiness. So these are my two great moments. And you remember the details. They come with the story. It's automatic. But what I used to do was I would write the incident and then maybe check up whether I was right, and I was mostly right. And I had an avid memory. I also kept a little diary, which was called a pink diary. I said, my pink diary, and if anyone will open it, they'll go blind. It's supposed to be such a secret and all that. But I myself, what I find when I think about my book is my fascination with people, fascination with other people's cultures, fascination with how people live, whether it's on my street or in another country. And that helps us to understand. It's easier in our countries in the East. In the West, they are more exclusive.
Yeah.
So,
well, it's obvious, I think. One thing is obvious. One is the memory aspect, which is really stunning. And especially this morning, Harish was reading loudly to me the part about your visit to this gentleman's home in Garden Reach, in a Ghoragari.
yes.
And what was his name?
I think I forget the name. The name
Anyway,
right escaped me.
he took you and these architectural spaces and how you imagined that the women would live in this quarter, how they would be, how it would be, the cooking was done and the smells wafting. So you're also a very sensory thinker.
Yes, I must be.
Yeah, yeah.
I must be. And as I said to you, I was very interested in spaces that I went to. You must remember that my grandmother had an empty living room. So when I went to other places living, I noticed everything, the way things were. I think sometimes interior decoration, architecture comes naturally to people. If you're interested, why are they having it? For instance, why in Chitpur Road the palaces are so Palladian, or even in Madhya Pradesh, you see, and you think about that.
And the Christmas party, the Christmas party where it goes on with a groaning table and all the different kinds of food. And again, to me, it's the Anglo-Indian food. The chicken which is cooked in a very...
Captain's chicken.
Captain's chicken.
The railway mutton curry, the captain's chicken. Bow Barracks was a very interesting place because it was built for British soldiers who refused to inhabit it. And Anglo-Indians went and stayed. And the people I mixed with, they had their relations there. And I'll never forget the 1949 Christmas. And I especially remember so many things at that Christmas party. For instance, hearing jazz for the first time. Jazz had come to India, and the Anglo-Indians were the first people who were there, who played jazz so well. And the way they mixed with you, the way they took you into their arms. And I remember seeing a very pretty girl sitting there. She went, someone asked her, said, Pam, why don't you go and sing? I think it was Silent Night or Come All Ye Faithful and all. And I looked at this young girl in black and I thought, what a beautiful voice. And later on she was to be the Pam Crane of Drinkers, the most famous crooner. But I was lucky in that way. Because I mixed with Maggie, I was able to mix with this kind of a society. And because I was genuinely interested. I was genuinely interested in the food people had, the way it was served. I absorbed everything. Because I think if you like people, you're interested in what they wear, what they say.
Fantastic. I think it's about the right time when we can move towards, maybe you have a little piece which you'd like to share with us, read to us? Would you?
I would like to start off, I will read 3 short pieces, which really, I think, defined my life in Park Lane, 7 Park Lane. So they may hand me the book.
Does anyone remember here what number Park Lane we have that lovely store where...
Yeah, the ladies,
women's friendly.
it's a bit further
Was
down.
it number 3 Park Lane or 29? Thank you. We have another wonderful writer here, Sarah Shah Halim. Thank you for coming.
Well, I'll start off with saying 7 Park Lane, Calcutta, was a corner house behind the Nawab of Murshidabad's palace. The 2-story building had verandas edging the house like frayed lace in a Victorian gown. 7 Park Lane is etched in memory like a beloved sepia photograph that one gazes at to recall the love, the unending happiness, and the element of surprise around every corner. This was the fountainhead of love and affection that I returned to every 9 months. It is a world apart from the disciplined confines of Loreto Convent, Darjeeling. In Ranjit Singh's taxi, picking me from Sialda station at 7 in the morning, the first thing, as I said to you earlier, was that I used to take off my shoes. Maggie was sitting on my right, smiling indulgently, while Nanna was sitting on my right, while Maggie, sitting on the left, gave me a hug. They were my 2 grandmothers, 2 queens of my special world, the 2 queens of 7 Park Lane. Nanna was maternal grandmother to my parents, to whom my parents entrusted my brother Riaz and me when they left in July 1946 to issue postgraduate studies at Yale University and the University of Iowa. Nanna and Maggie came from different worlds. Nanna's heritage was rooted in Muslim Bengal. Nanna's father, Sayyid Abdur Rahman, came from Faridpur in East Bengal and was a zamindar. Her mother was English-born, bred, but after her marriage to Abdur Rahman, she considered herself a Muslim Bengali. Her English connections were then considered incidental. Maggie was Anglo-Indian, a term legally defined by the Government of India Act as a person whose father is of European descent. However, it was more than a mix of Anglo-Indian blood. It is a culture born of history, giving it a unique ethnicity. More of this in later chapters. These were my 2 queens, and I was their little princess. In their early 50s, both were beautiful, with gentle eyes, silky white hair. Nanna wore hers in a left bun twist, while Maggie had 2 plaits piled like a tiara. And they loved me as much as I loved them. That's one part. Master Moshai. Master Moshai, to put it simply, was my bestest friend. He ranked just below Nanna and Maggie. I remember the first time I met him. Riaz and I just came back from watching Lauren Bacall and Humphrey Bogart in the black and white film To Have and Have Not. Aping Lauren Bacall, I said to Riaz as I climbed the rickety 7 Park Lane stairs, "You know how to whistle, don't you? You put your lips together and blow." Riaz raised an eyebrow. I was in the middle of puckering my lips when I caught sight of a tall, striking man talking to Nanna, so tall that he seemed to be reaching the ceiling. "Tal gach, ek pai chhariye, shob gach chhariye." Like to cause one-legged palm tree winking at the skies. Nanna glanced at us and turned to him and said, "Dada, come to meet Zeena and Riaz, Rana's 2 children from Darjeeling." Riaz shook hands solemnly. I gave a low curtsy. The stranger smiled. "Hello, I'm your new Bangla teacher, Dipankar Chakravarti." I could see the 3 of us having a rollicking time, teaching each other many things, of shoes and ships, of sealing wax, of cabbages and kings. Who could resist falling in love with him? But even Riaz grinned. This marked the beginning of a friendship that would last a lifetime. To save me from grappling with his full name, he added, "Call me Master Moshai." And I exhaled with great relief. He had been at St. John's College, Oxford, with Nana Sahib, my grandfather, in the 1920s. I cannot imagine 2 men more different. Nana Sahib was short, sallow, buttoned in tight suits, and Master Moshai, 14 years younger, a Roman god in pristine white Shantipuri dhoti and silk Punjabi. I had to concede reluctantly that Nana Sahib could not be that bad if he could befriend someone like Dipankar Chakravarti. That was my introduction to him. But Riaz doesn't seem to remember him.
So I'm just wondering, Zeena Ma, do you have one more you want to read? Or
The end, maybe. The epilogue. No, I'll read Such Sweet Sorrow first. This was the day Maggie was leaving for Australia. I was awake even before the morning azan called to prayer. I remember that Maggie would be gone in another couple of hours. I hurriedly ran down the rickety stairs, right down to the front gate. No, I did not run to Maggie. I felt a dull, aching pain suffuse my entire being. The O'Malleys left at 7 o'clock in the morning. It was early for 7 Park Lane, but even then a sizable crowd had gathered on either side of 7 Park Lane. I looked up to see Nanna on the roof of the porch. Makmal Khala, that was our maid, was on her side. Makmal Khala must have realized that I did not want her near me. I wanted to be alone in my grief. I looked around, and then suddenly, Foreign Kaka, a corner lamplighter, came and held my hand. That's when Maggie leaves for Australia. And the last bit. It was February the 28th, 1959, 8 years later, as I sat amidst family and friends, a bride waiting to step into the next phase of my life. Nanna drew me aside and said softly, "Here are 2 things I have specially kept for you." The first was a letter. And even before I opened it, I saw it was from Maggie. It was attached to an oblong blue velvet box. I looked up at Nanna and asked, "Why, after all these years? Why didn't any of them write before? Why didn't Maggie write to me?" Nanna lowered her gaze and answered quietly, "Maggie died soon after her arrival in Australia. Hortense, that was Maggie's daughter-in-law, wrote it and let me know the sad details. I had not the heart to tell you. Maggie was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer a month after her arrival in Australia and died a couple of months later." But that was the way, the characters of my book started exiting in 51. So that was my world of Calcutta. And as Julie has elaborated, and I have elaborated, I enjoyed every moment writing it. And when you enjoy anything that that has affected you, you do remember the details. Though I did check up to validate some of the dates. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed reading the book as much as I enjoyed writing it. I'm repeating it again. So,
shall we open the floor? I'm sure there are questions coming your way or comments which are very positive. Please. Actor Mike Pasco in the way. This is Mr. Shabolna Roy. He's written 13 books. Zeena, mine is an engineer. Go for it.
Yeah, I have two questions, briefly, one rhetorical. How are Kolkata Kebabs and Christmas cake different from Calcutta Kebabs and Christmas cake? That's number one. Number two, what do you think is the difference presently in Bangladesh after Sheikh Hasina has left? I'm saying not in the interim period, but after the elections have been held. What structural changes do you see in Bangladesh post the elections, the democratic elections that have taken place now, and the government is in place? Thank you.
to answer your first question, it's called Calcutta Kebabs because the story takes place when Calcutta was known as Calcutta. Simply put, it was Dr. Banerjee who later on changed the name to Kolkata. To answer your second question, it's too early to say. When political changes, as sudden and violent as they are, one has to watch and wait. Thank you.
Well done. Harish, I think you have some things to talk about, being the Lucknow boy and Wajid Ali. So go ahead and then pass it on.
So, I congratulate you on this book, and as I saw it, your chapter on on Bow Barracks has interest for historians, in that you provide a rare glimpse into post-war, immediate post-World War II Calcutta, where while Christmas is going on, you are watching through a crack in the wall a dogfight taking place between the Japanese and British aircraft. I think that's fascinating. And then I think it's also a good telling of the memoir wraps into itself elements of social history, whereby you tell us about the inflow of new jitterbug and various dances in the immediate post-war period, post-war Calcutta, what they were eating, what they were thinking. And similarly, the chapter on Wajid Ali Shah, where you begin by talking about Tipu Sultan coming and building the Taliganj Club, and then you talk about Wajid Ali Shah and how he tries to create a second Lucknow on the banks of the Hooghly. So I think these are important. It's important. I congratulate you on recording these very rare glimpses. It's just a comment that I'm making, and I think these are very valuable because I didn't see this very much anywhere else. This kind of view through the keyhole of a dogfight taking place, and all that, the post-war Calcutta, what happened, and you throw in little bits and pieces about the famine, of which you didn't know much because you were only 4 at that time, but you did mention it.
Well, to answer your question, we had just come, the British was still in India when I started the book. And we were very much part of the Ingo Bongo Society was very much part of that. It was the British who exiled Tipu Sultan and Wajid Ali Shah. But we had our friends and we visited them. And it was interesting to see how they clung to their old ways and they remembered. I mean, Wajid Ali Shah, by adding potatoes, made pulao into biryani. And, but what's very interesting was that he was also very interested in classical music, classical dance, and I found that fascinating. Even as a young girl, reading about him and getting to know, these were narratives that were told to us by people who knew him directly. Because we went to see friends in Madhya Pradesh, where they had not dog fighting or pigeon fighting. And Nana, of course, also entered the pigeon fighting race and lost. Because I don't know why, she always backed the dog horse. She was in a very bad mood. But she didn't concentrate very much.
You? No? Yeah, sure. Sarah, you're not getting away, Manish. Expecting you to ask questions. Go ahead,
Zeena Appa, if that's what I may call you. One of the characters who stand out totally in your life, in this whole scheme of things, is Nanna. Somehow your grandmother seems to have played a very, very important role in shaping your thoughts, in the excitements that you faced, everything. That's, I just wanted to know, I think that's the one person who seems to have played a very major role in your life.
To answer your question, have you finished?
The other thing, of course, is Farzana smiling there. How did you manage to write this whole fat book by longhand, and then fortunately you had your daughter type it all out for you? That is an incredible feat, because all of us are so used to writing on the computer. So that's another feat.
To answer you the first question, Nana was a very unusual person. Her mother was English, but that to her was really incidental. But she was one person who embraced all people from all walks of life, and she taught us that happiness lies right round the corner. To look forward to things, don't look backwards. That was one thing. The second question was? Of course, the writing. I had no recourse. I've tried many times to get onto the computer, but I have failed. So I've been forced to, and I can tell you, Farzana has been very, very kind. My granddaughter's younger one, also very patient. And the last book typist that I had, Anmona, she said, "Maybe it's time." I've now become a lecturer at Brack University. Maybe it's time that you start typing. So I said, well, we can always give it a try.
Yeah. Since you were talking, your mother got married at the age of 25. And when you got married at the age of 19, so didn't your Nana try to stop that, your marriage at such an early age?
No, I don't think anybody tried to stop anybody's actions. It just happened that my mother got married at a later age because she wanted to study. That was the unusual thing, that my grandmother encouraged my mother to study. My mother was a brilliant student, and she did her honors. Muslim girls did not at that time enter the tertiary world. They maybe completed the secondary world. But my grandmother was the one who encouraged. She was 56 years old when she looked after me and Riaz, for 5 years. And she had a very broad mind. But that is obvious. What was the other thing?
No, I said that's your mother.
My mother. Well, it just happened. I met this young man. My parents arranged. My mother saw this. My husband had done very well in the Foreign Service. And my mother was far more conservative than my grandmother. But my grandmother never objected to anything that anyone did, really. Though she had a very strong personality. Probably she didn't seem, pursuing further studies, or probably she also got scared that, I should get married sooner, because there were so many talks about whether I would marry an Englishman. So, I was studying at university abroad. There's always that danger. But I think it just happened, and nobody really objected.
I'm really pushing it here, Zeena Ma. But at any point, did you have any reservations, or were you a little sad that you didn't marry an Englishman?
No, not at all. I knew the first time I met Farooq Choudhury that he was going to be the only person in my life. So, and he was for the next 60 years. So, no.
You're half English?
No, I'm not half English or half Irish or anything. My grandmother's mother was English. Her father was from Plymouth. That my mother told Farzana. When it's a very pertinent question you should ask, because when I remember asking my father, he said, people say we have English blood. Do we have English blood? And Abba looked at me and he said, no, you have no English blood in you. And later on I found out he was adored by mother so much that he didn't even want to let me know that we had. People had reservations by that time.
You are 25%.
Well,
That is so Australian.
one of you take my DNA, find out how much percentage.
You are, because your grandmother was.
Okay, please.
Because at the end of your book, you have a kind of
Genealogy.
yes, you have generations, and I was reading them, and they were all Irish and O'Malley's and
No, Irish
O'Reillys
were
and
Maggie's
O'Hara.
family.
Yeah.
And my grandmother's family were from Plymouth.
From Plymouth.
Yes.
So you're English.
Harish, you can't really prove that yet. Okay, Amit, please.
25%.
Mother.
Amit, go ahead.
Yes, half of that, 1/8.
Is that okay? Okay, thank you for this enchanting talk. My question is generally related to how a person becomes a writer, the writer's craft. Normally, we have writers, like we have many here, who write as they grow and grow old writing. And therefore, they write about things which they are actually, things which are not too far back in time. Sometimes they are contemporary, sometimes, Now, in your case, unless I am mistaken, you took to writing after a full life of, a diplomat's wife and so on, and then you started writing back. So, thanks to your exceptional memory, but yet, do you sometimes feel that if you had written while you were in your youth, it would have been different? Just a musing on the writer's craft.
Of course, I think that. And I came into writing incidentally, and you're quite right. After my husband had retired, I started with short stories. And my first short story was Tea with Miss Brooks, which was published by one of our leading papers, the Daily Star. That was a great encouragement. Farzana has asked me not to mention her name, but she was one person who practically, I would say, provoked me into writing. Because when I started writing my stories, she took them out. I didn't know. I had written a lot of short stories. She sent them off to the Daily Star. And that's a great encouragement for anyone when their stories start coming out in print. And that was when I was in my 70s. Yes. No, and then when my husband was dying, actually, we were in the Philippines. And I was all the time watching cooking programs, something or the other. I was always fond of cookery of some sort. And I remember Farzana saying, why did you get up and write about Loreto? And she said, you've always been wanting to write about Loreto. I said, well, actually, I've always been wanting to write about 7 Park Lane. I told Farzana that. I was so happy there. And she said, start with, Loreto, because that's where it all started. And that was church bells and Darjeeling tea. And I found it a good discipline, but I hadn't really got my form then. As you keep writing, you discover your style, and then when you write about some things that have really affected your life, and emotionally, and a period of life that you think that you were happiest at, you want to note it down as a memento so that others following you will not forget what life was like 80 years ago in Calcutta.
Good evening, ma'am. My name is Saira Shah Halim, and I've been hearing you and Julie Dee in conversation. It's been very interesting, and I look forward to reading the book. Now, you come from pre-partition India, and you've seen certain socio-political upheavals in India when the partition happened, and later on when you went to Bangladesh. So I was just inquisitive about, because I have a lot of friends in Bangladesh, and I've traveled to Bangladesh many times, about 8-9 times on work, or for a SARC meeting or something or the other. So there are a lot of friends of mine who were Indian, however they married men who held Bangladeshi passports, and I just asked them this question: how did it feel to give up the Indian citizenship and take on the Bangladeshi citizenship? So as a very young girl, when you made that transition, when you straddled both the worlds, how did it feel to become a part of Bangladesh, which is of course a larger part of the Indian subcontinent, but there's always a transition. When you move much later, when Bangladesh was carved out of India after the 71 war. So I wanted to ask you, did you feel any difference in the geopolitical scenario when you lived in India, and later on when you went to Bangladesh? What did you feel between both the countries?
The years that Calcutta Kebabs and Christmas cake take place was when I was between 7 and 12. So I didn't really notice. I mean, Action Day had taken place while I was in Darjeeling, the riots, but we were not affected. I also did not realize that everybody that we were living with in Park Lane, they were departing to other countries, that a division had, the partition had taken place. And in my book, it comes out quite strongly when I'm talking to the taxi driver, who's Ranjit Singh, who's from Haryana, who's from Jalandhar, but came originally from Lahore. When I first go to West Pakistan, and my uncles asked my grandmother, when is she going to? But she didn't. She stayed on. That was the first time I also saw. It was in a warplane. My uncle Khalid came. He was in the Air Force and took us. Talking about Bangladesh, the consciousness right from the beginning, it all started with the 1905 partition of Bengal. And that's an important chapter which I wanted to include, because many people thought that Robi Thakur was very communal. And he is the one who wrote Shonar Bangla, our national anthem. I'm a Tagorist. I've read all his books. I enjoy his songs. And I looked into that, and they were also family acquaintances. So I had an interest in that. The 1905 partition delineated when the British thought that the Bengal presidency was too large and it must be divided. But the Bengali society in Calcutta, the aristocratic Bengali society in Calcutta, people like Robi Thakur and all, felt that they would lose their identity because if they joined the other half of Bengal, as it was envisaged, which would include Bihar and Orissa, they would be a minority. And if Bangladesh, if Bengal joined Assam and it became part of the 1905 partition, there would still be a minority. But as a Bengali, Bengal as a whole, they would still keep their identity. And I think Robi Thakur was concerned with that. But fortunately or unfortunately for Robi Thakur, East Bengal did come into being then, right then. You see, that was when it all started. Then there was the question of whether there should be a united Bengal, to which there were a lot of subscribers. But most of Hindu Bengalis did not want it. And by that time, the Muslims had almost started their cry for Pakistan. The cry for Pakistan started in Bangladesh, actually. But after we joined them, we realized that you might have the same religion, but you might not have the same culture. And there were cultural differences.
The culture difference.
Or the language.
The language culture.
It started with the language. And religion is, of course, a very great part of one's identity. But language, in what we think, the process by which we think or commute with each other is far more important. We realize that, well, they are different people, racially, everywhere, to us. Then we thought that we are not, West Bengal hadn't wanted to join us. Why shouldn't we be our country by ourselves? But, and that's how Bangladesh came into being, which was in 1971.
Thank you so much. I'm just mentioning my father is a 71 war veteran. He fought the 71 war that liberated Bangladesh. So just adding that. Thank you so much.
There's something to be said about the books that I think Rising Asia Literary Circle has launched. And I think all of you will bear me out. Anasuya, Swati, Sharupa, Pronita, all of you who are members. For some reason, there's a huge interest where Calcutta is a character. We've launched 4 books, Harish, in the last 6 months. And Shabarna Roy's book, again, is Kolkata, Boxes and Bylines. Last book, Fractured, Kolkata in Pieces. So I'm going to come back to you, and maybe the last word, Zeena Ma, think about it. What is it about Calcutta that people are revisiting it in their writing? Manish, you're not getting away, but first I will pass it on to Brinda, and then, come on.
Zeena, I'm going to ask you, Kolkata always evokes a lot of nostalgia for people who've known it, people who've lived here in the past. For those of us who still live here, it's for us still a unique place to live in. Your thoughts on that? And you've been coming and going in the last few years, so many years over the years you've been visiting here. What do you feel? Do you see Calcutta / Kolkata with the changes, or does it still you hark back to your time, or you look at it from a nostalgic point of view?
Well, obviously, I wouldn't have written the book if I thought that Calcutta was exactly the same. Calcutta has changed. when Kolkata became Kolkata, that defined the change. What was uniquely the second capital of the world had now become a province, capital of a province. From capital of India to capital of a province is a big thing. But what I was very lucky in being able to get were the traces of that heritage. When Calcutta was the capital of India, the second capital of the world, and and I have a chapter on how on Calcutta and its history. And the reason why we come back is that heritage that it had. There was a period in the early 40s and 50s, 60s when you had cafe societies starting, jazz was coming in. 250,000 American GIs were in Calcutta during the war. And now if that doesn't make a change to the city. And I remember I used to stand on the balcony of my grandmother's house and see the American Joes passing by and lean forward and say, "Hey Joe, throw us a few." And they would throw in their candies and things and all. That all disappeared. Over the years, then there was, during the British time, there were 3 Calcuttas. There was the Black Town, where the patrician North Bengalis stayed. There was the Grey Town, where the Muslims and the Anglo-Indians and all stayed. And then there was the White Town, exclusively made for the British. And that was, you had Furpos and Fleuries, you had the Armenians building Park Street. It was a colonial world which disappeared, which is still there, but will definitely disappear because politics will dictate the change. I mean, the different political opinions that come up. I mean, from Calcutta to Kolkata, and then a large segment of Bengal became East Bengal or Bangladesh. Calcutta became uniquely West Bengal, and I believe at one time they wanted to call itself Bengal, and it was refused or something like that. So it's becoming more, I would say, from being a heterogeneous society, it is, yes, it's homogeneous.
Really, I mean, this is such a huge honor and opportunity for us to hear from Manish Gaikwad, who always keeps under the radar. Manish, tell us a few things that maybe came to your mind when you heard Zeena Ma speaking, because much of your life was, not much, but a part of your life was lived in the Bow Barracks, where you write about your mother as a courtesan. You're not escaping.
Try this one.
Thank you so much for this lovely evening. You're looking very regal, and that's something I aspire to be when I grow up. I'm also just reading the Bow Barracks chapter, and yes, I grew up in the kothas close to the Bow Barracks, which is the Banduk Gali Kotha, which is in Bow Bazaar. It's a walking distance from Bow Barracks. So I'm just, I don't have much to say about the book right now because I've only read one chapter, but I'm very interested to read the rest of it. But from your talk, from this session, I hope to learn more about, like Harish was saying about the keyhole through which you were watching the dog fight.
that was something that piqued my interest, and I would love to read that. My question for you is that after this lovely evening, some of us are dreaming about dinner. So, where do you recommend to find the best Calcutta kebabs?
Used to be, at one time, it was definitely Nizam's. And in fact, we knew Nizam Sahib personally. He invited my grandmother for dinner, and our maid Makbal Khala claims to have said to us that she actually taught him how to make Mulai kebab. She had so many claims that she had, but I described that in a chapter in my book. Now I really don't.
And is Nahoum still making the best Christmas cake?
I don't know, but I know that now used to make a certain, used to make the best Christmas cake. No, the best Christmas cake was made by my mother. She used gold instead of she used jaggery.
Oh, thank you so much.
The best Christmas cake used to, and I remember whenever we went to sit down, I would also, I'd love to courtesy, I would courtesy and say, Shalom. You would say, I have a special savory for your grandmother. So in those days, people had intimate connections with the shops that they were dealing with. That's why I speak. Because I don't know whether that exists now.
Yes, yes.
Thank you so much.
I am feeling blessed to be here this evening, and very happy that to hear your stories. And I wish and many more young people had the opportunity to sit here and listen to your story, because many young people these days don't have nana. They live in a nuclear family. So I work with young people, adult in the college. So what message do you have for them where they don't, they are busy with the mobiles most of the time. We have different challenges young people have these days. So what message do you have for them?
It's very difficult to give youngsters any messages because they just don't listen. I think every generation makes its own culture and its own connections. So I really would not press on a message, but I could invite them to read this book and show them how attractive a life was that included so many cultures, so many generations, where your grandmother was the fountainhead of love, where your grandmother is now isolated and put in an old age home, whereas, society is, maybe this book might nudge them, but you can't tell the younger generation anything. So, and you all are my younger generation, so.
Thank you very much.
Good evening, ma'am. So, first of all, it was a really lovely book that I did not finish reading yet, but I have gotten through some chapters. And since most of the questions have already been asked, I have this one question, a couple of questions actually. So one of them is that you have named your chapter, one of the chapters at the end. It was the best of times and it was the worst of times. So Dickens seems to be an influence on you. So was it like a personal favorite, or did you find any bits of relatability that you chose the name of the chapter as such?
I couldn't understand your question. Could you say it?
The chapter best of times, worst of times. How did you choose it?
It was the best of times because it created all these lovely memories for me. And I talk about those memories with my grandmother, with my uncle, with Maggie, Master Moshai, and all the people even the people who lived on the street where it was the worst of times because it was changing. Simply that. It was changing, people were going to different destinations. Whole of Park Lane was disbanded. And I remember Maggie saying that you follow us to Australia. I said, no, we cannot go to Australia because... Because at that time it was white Australia. But now, of course, one can. My daughter herself is is from Australia. But it was the worst of times because my world was disappearing. It was the best of times because I recalled all the good times that I enjoyed.
Thank you, Ankita. Is Shivaji still here? Shivaji, would you have a question?
Actually, I do have a question, so let me ask. This question already has been asked, and thank you very much for a fascinating session. It's really wonderful. My question's on nostalgia. This book is obviously a masterclass in nostalgia, writing about nostalgia. Now, there are people who have lived that period, who will have a first-hand empathy. There are people like me who are, let's say, 1 degree of separation of parents and friends and so on. How do we motivate and inspire young people to consume nostalgia and the difference it can make to their lives?
To consume more nostalgia. I think it's by writing books like this, when you write engaging stories, when you have interviews, when you present interviews, you present a way of life that lived. You romanticize it, actually, when we write it. And it's the romanticization that attracts people to nostalgia.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shivaji. Dr. Bose, would you have a question? Can we have a mic here, please?
I'm sorry, I have a terrible voice, and I had promised myself that I wouldn't ask. I'm sorry, I'm 73. Okay? my time to be sexy has gone. I'll have to write a book on that. Yeah, but I really loved listening to you, and I made a few notes. I admit that I haven't finished reading the book yet, and I'm sorry for that. But the way you have described Maggie, I feel as if I've actually been with her. And when you said that she passed away in Australia, I was actually feeling very sad myself, not having seen the person or read your book, having read your book. I've told you that I'm a doctor, and I have lots of patients coming from Metiaburz. And when they tell me that they are from Metiaburz, I say, oh, well, all right. But now I actually want to go to Metiaburz and see where they live, the architecture of the place, and the smells. You describe smells so well. You know that you're a legend, right? You are a living history book. And as you talk to us, you are turning page after page of time, of the golden sands of time. And that was so wonderful. Thank you so much for coming here and engaging with us and transporting us to a different world. I've been a part of that world. Of course, I came to the world much after you did, but I can actually feel everything that you have lived through. And thank you so much for writing the book. I actually tried to get a copy, but, well, we'll see. Thank you.
All I can say that what better compliment could a writer get than what Dr. Colonial has said. Thank you.
And he is a damn good doctor. He saved Harish's life.
Yeah.
So that's good. That's good. Any more questions? Yes, please go ahead. Dola Mitra.
Yeah, I'm Dola Mitra I'm features editor of Statesman. It was a riveting discussion. Thank you so much for that. My question was that, even when people write non-fiction, there is a degree of an element of, I cannot say that, I will not say that. So when you write a personal saga, is there a conscious decision that, okay, this is something I am not going to reveal, and this is very secret, and I just will not open up? Even though you have clearly opened up about a lot of things in the book, but is there some things that still get left behind that you conscientiously decide not to reveal?
Well, if you read my book, you'll see that I've written very openly about all the societies that I mixed with. So I did not have any reservations when I was writing the book. I don't know what I will do with my next book, because that will be different and dealing with different countries. And as the wife of a diplomat, one had to be especially careful. But as a young girl from 7 to 10 or 7 to 12, it was her observations, it was her Calcutta, what she saw, what she felt, her emotions. A girl who loved listening to stories, who was fascinated, curious about people. Whereas later on, after 51, when life became more, my mother being a more conventional person, we led a more conventional life. Yeah. So to get back to your question, no, I didn't hold back at all. Okay.
Straight from the heart, clearly.
I wrote very openly about everything that was happening.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the absolutely riveting.
And that is why I told my family when they come to see, and I'm telling that to Riaz as well, and he has a beautiful daughter called Manushi who has a lovely bookstore. I said, when I have my book review there, you can come with bricks and bats because I attract a lot of controversial attention because I do write very frankly and very openly.
Yeah. Thank you. Yes, that's pretty clear from the book itself. But still wanted to know if there are more things that are not revealed in this book but will be in the next one. But thank you. I think you've revealed pretty much everything in this book. Thank you.
In fact, when I was writing about Robi Thakur and his love for Victoria Campos, people were shocked that I was disclosing certain facts.
Okay.
But I said, no, that's what happened.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dolak. Yeah. One more question. Pronita.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. This is not a question, it's just a comment that came to my mind, a thought. We were just talking about how this book could be inspiring the young generation to realize that what they are missing out on the real experiences of life. Mostly they are glued to their screens and they are missing out on these relationships, on connections, on care. But then I thought it the other way around. It's inspiring for the people in the 7th and 8th decade of their lives, like my parents are. It is extremely inspiring to think that even at this age, you should make the most of it by pursuing your passion, whatever you love doing. Because you started doing this at a time when you thought that it was just what you wanted to as a passion, as something that you wanted to, it had no agenda behind it because you weren't following it from a young, tender age. It was not maybe a curated, calculated move. So it just came out as an outburst of your passion, your emotions. So maybe that's something from which the elders might take a cue that is how you can make the most of the later years of your life.
I think that's very well said. I don't need to say anything more.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Girl, that's 7 to 10. How did she manage to be alive even now inside of you? I want to know that.
What girl?
The little girl, that's 7 to 10. How did she manage to be alive even now inside of you?
3 words. I love people.
Okay, Ronnie. We call it today with your question.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, they say don't judge a book by its cover. But here I can also judge the book by its cover because nobody has commented on the wonderful book cover.
Yes, I'm just pleased to say
it's beautiful. It itself, the display of colors and the theme, it itself, it's a peek into nostalgia, I feel. And I love the cover. The book I haven't yet read, but I'm surely going to read the book because we heard so much. It's lovely to know you, lovely the wonderful narration of your experience.
Thank you, Andrani.
Well, you know, as they say, all good things come to a kind of an end or a beginning with the reading of the book. So books are there. Farzana is very kind. She will look after the transactional analysis there. But thank you so much, Zeena Ma. Thank you for doing this for Calcutta.
Thank you, Julie. I was not doing it for Calcutta. I was doing it for the best part of my life.
But they love you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Farzana.